Welcome to the game room.
Let's paint Jason. Welcome back to the channel. This is another one of the multi-part killers that you can get. The different parts are the boots, his coveralls, his flesh, which is kind of important, the axe, and the hockey mask, which is most important. So for his flesh, we're going to go with necrotic flesh. You've seen the movies. He's basically been dead, buried, brought back multiple times. So the necrotic flesh gives it that undead, moldy kind of look. So you have his head, his neck, and his hands. And here you don't have to be too careful. If you do get it on other parts, just touch it up with your gray sear base paint before moving on after this. But I'm gonna speed this up and let's just get the flesh painted. All right, and here he is with the flesh finished. You can kind of see it's kind of got that greenish tint to it. All right, so the next one we're gonna do is Black Templar, and we're gonna use this on his boots. And the Black Templar does a really good job. It just, his boots are black, and it just fills in the gaps. I've talked about contrast paints in all of these videos, so you kind of get the idea if you're using them. They fill in the gaps really well. You get your painting and your highlighting and your shading pretty much done in one shot. We will come back to this later and just do a little bit of a dry brush with the uniform gray just to give it a little bit more. Dark Oath Flesh is another contrast paint which we've used in some of the other videos. Now for this one, we're going to use this on the axe handle. Be very careful up against his hand. You don't want to get it onto the flesh, you just want to get it up against it, and it'll fill in those gaps and it'll shade around his hand, give it that shadowing and make it look like he's holding it. It's just, contrast paints are really nice, folks, if you don't use them. For quick painting, if you're trying to get stuff done, that's what they were designed for. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to get these models painted and on to the table. All right, Militarum Green. This we're going to use for his coveralls. And his coveralls are the biggest portion of the model, so you can use a smaller brush. I try to use a little bit bigger brush here just because it's a lot of space and I want to cover it as quickly as possible. Again, with the contrast, don't let it pool too much, or when it dries it'll look a little weird, but you do want it to sit down in the recesses. So load up your brush and start spreading it around. So it comes out, it's a dark green, and it'll work for our purposes here to kind of match our picture at the beginning of this video. For the axe blade, gunmetal, any silver metal that you want to use, I use gunmetal just because it's a darker silver. It's not as bright as like your shining platinum or any of those. So Just be very careful around the wooden shaft of the axe. You don't want to get any silver on that. And if the contrast paint is not completely dry and you touch it, it will pull the silver onto it. So you might want to let that contrast paint dry on that axe handle if it is not yet. Flesh wash. We've used this a lot. And what do you think we're going to use it on? The flesh. Okay, so while he kind of gives that moldy look, it's also darker if you watch any of the movies or seen the videos and stuff. So I don't want the bright green for the flesh that the necrotic flesh does. So the flesh tone will give it that fleshy, dirty, hasn't taken a bath in 7 movies kind of look. 8 movies? How many is Jason actually in? Is it the end of the first? Is it in the second? Third? Ooh, here's a trivia question for you. Which movie does Jason get the hockey mask? Number 2, who does he get it from? Little trivia question there. If you know your Friday the 13th history or movie useless knowledge, there you go. Okay, so like I said a little while ago, we're going to just do a dry brush of the uniform gray across the boots just to scuff them up a little bit. Dry brushing, if you've seen some of the others, we're going to put paint on our brush and then we're going to wipe almost all of it off onto a paper towel so that just the stiff bristles have some on it. You're going to quickly run those back and forth over your target and it'll pick out the highlights and just touch the highlights. And so with that, we will kind of scuff up his boots because we don't want them to look pristine. And white for the mask. You probably want to thin your white down if it's not already thin. A small brush, very carefully. Don't stick it into the eyes because his eye sockets are actually black. So you want those to stay as dark as possible. Just be very careful around the edge. If it's too white for you, you can hit it with like a flesh wash, or you might, dirty down your white for you. It just depends on which movie effect you're going for. In the later movies, it gets to be a really nasty brown, but in the earlier movies, it's much more brighter white. So, whatever you want to do. It's your model. Paint it the way you want to. I'm just here to try to help. Okay, contrast Blood Angel's red, and this is, so if you look at the hockey mask, he does have some red markings on it, on the mask. I'm only going to put one because that's, if you can get all 3 of them on there, cool. I'm going to go for the one right above his nose very carefully and just touch the mask, kind of like that. Not perfect, but it gives you the look. Okay, that's what we were starting with, and here's where we ended up. So again, did we hit it? Did we nail it? Were we way off the mark? What do you think? I think it came out pretty good myself, but it just goes again to show you it doesn't take a lot to get these done quickly and still make them look good. I remember we go for tabletop quality, tabletop viewing distance, 3 feet away, as we've talked about. So anyway, tell me what you think. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.